My sister texted, sold the family beach house for $2 million. Thanks for being abroad. When the new owner went to renovate, they found my name on every document. The sheriff called my sister, ma'am, you're under arrest for fraud. The real owner just landed. And the message came through WhatsApp while I was sitting in a refugee camp outside Nairobi, helping distribute medical supplies. After 3 months with limited internet, I finally had enough signal to download my messages. Hey, Elena. Great news. Sold the family beach house for $2 million. Thanks for being abroad and making this easy. Already transferred mom's stuff to storage. Enjoy Africa, Derek. I stared at the screen. The heat of the Kenyan sun suddenly feeling cold against my skin. Our family beach house, the one our grandmother left specifically to me, sold. My hands shook as I scrolled through the earlier messages I'd missed. Cleaning out the beach house. So many memories. Found a buyer. They love the vintage details. Closing next week. Mom's stuff will be safe. The most recent message was a photo of Derek holding a champagne glass on what looked like a new yacht. Captioned, living the dream. I tried calling her. No answer. I tried the family lawyer. Disconnected. I even tried calling the beach house landline. The number had been reassigned. Dr. Morgan? One of the nurses touched my shoulder. Are you all right? Family emergency. I managed. I need to get home. But the vaccination program, I'll be back. I promised. Already pulling up flight websites on my phone. This can't wait. 42 hours later, I landed at LAX exhausted, unshowered, and furious. I'd tried reaching Derek dozens of times during layovers. Her phone went straight to voicemail. Her social media showed her partying in Cabo. I drove my rental car straight to the beach house in Malibu. My grandmother's house. My house. The one place that had always felt like home. A construction crew was tearing out the front deck. Excuse me, I called out. Parking haphazardly. What's happening here? A man in a hard hat approached. Ma'am, this is a closed construction site. The new owners. I'm the owner. I said firmly, this is my house. He looked confused. The Washingtons bought this property 6 weeks ago. They hired us for renovations. The Washingtons? My mind raced. Can I speak with them? They're in Milan, but I can call the project manager. 20 minutes later, a woman in her 50s arrived in a Tesla looking concerned. I'm Patricia Washington. There seems to be some confusion? My sister sold you this house, I said, trying to stay calm, but she didn't own it. I do. Patricia's face went pale. That's impossible. We paid $2 million. We have all the paperwork. Paperwork signed by Derek Morgan? I asked. Not Elena Morgan? The seller was Derek Morgan. Yes. She said she inherited it from her grandmother. Can I see the documents? Patricia hesitated, then made a call. Our lawyer will meet us at the house in an hour. This is concerning. While we waited, I pulled up documents on my phone, my grandmother's will, the deed transfer, tax records, everything backed up to the cloud. Thank God for digital copies. This house has been in my name for 6 years, I explained. My grandmother left it to me specifically, not to the family, not to my sister, to me. But Derek had keys, knew the history. Showed us family photos because she's my sister. She visited. But visiting doesn't make you the owner. The Washington's lawyer arrived, a sharp-dressed man named Harrison who looked increasingly uncomfortable as he reviewed my documents. Mrs. Washington, he said slowly. I'm afraid Ms. Morgan is correct. The deed has always been in her name. These signatures, they're forgeries. Patricia sank into a patio chair. We've been defrauded? It appears so. Harrison confirmed. We need to contact the authorities immediately. 2 hours later, I sat in the Malibu Sheriff's Station giving my statement. Detective Rivera took notes while shaking her head. Your sister took advantage of you being overseas with limited communication. She summarized, forged your signature, created fake documents, and sold property she didn't own. She knew I was in Kenya for Doctors Without Borders. I said, I go every year for 3 months. She planned this. We'll put out a warrant for her arrest. Do you know where she might be? I pulled up her Instagram, Cabo San Lucas. Apparently, living it up on the Washington's money. Not for long, Rivera assured me. Patricia Washington and her husband Robert were devastated but surprisingly understanding. We met the next day at a coffee shop to discuss the situation. We should have been more careful, Robert admitted. But Derek was so convincing. She knew every detail about the house, the family history. She would. I said, we spent summers there as kids. Grandma lived there year-round. It was her pride and joy. Why did she leave it only to you? Patricia asked gently. I smiled sadly. Because I was the only one who visited her. Derek came for the beach parties. My brother Kara came when he needed money. I came to spend time with Grandma. Every weekend I could manage during med school. She said I was the only one who loved the house for the memories, not the real estate value. She was right about Derek. Apparently, Robert said grimly. I'm sorry you're caught in this. I said, I know you're victims too. We'll get our money back, Patricia said, or most of it. Our lawyer says we can go after Derek civilly as well as the criminal charges. But this is your family. This must be devastating. It was, but not entirely surprising. Derek had always been the golden child who could do no wrong. Charming. Beautiful. Perpetually broke despite our parents' generosity. She'd started multiple businesses with family money, each one failing spectacularly. But she always had an excuse. Always had a new scheme. Just a small loan, she'd say, I'm good for it. I'd stopped lending her money after she'd borrowed my car in college and sold it, claiming it was stolen. Our parents had believed her. They always believed her. Your sister played the long game. Detective Rivera told me when she called with an update. She started laying groundwork months ago, told neighbors you'd decided to sell, had mail forwarded, even filed a fake power of attorney. She's always been a planner, I admitted, just usually for smaller cons. Well, she's graduated to felony fraud. Mexican authorities picked her up. She's being extradited. The months leading up to the trial were a whirlwind of depositions, evidence gathering, and media attention. The story had caught the attention of local news outlets. Doctor defrauded by sister while serving overseas made for compelling headlines. I found myself reluctantly thrust into the spotlight, fielding calls from reporters who wanted to know about Derek's history of manipulation. The prosecution team, led by Assistant District Attorney Sarah Chen, was thorough and relentless. They uncovered Derek's pattern of deception going back years. Bank records showed she'd been living beyond her means for the past decade, bouncing from one failed venture to another. Credit card statements revealed luxury purchases made in the weeks leading up to the fraudulent sale, designer clothes, expensive dinners, even a deposit on a luxury apartment in Santa Monica that she'd planned to move into after the escrow closed. During one particularly difficult deposition, I had to relive years of Derek's lies and manipulations. Attorney Chen walked me through incident after incident, the time Derek claimed she needed money for medical expenses that turned out to be a spa weekend, the investment opportunity that was actually a gambling debt, the emergency loan for car repairs when she'd actually crashed her car while drunk and didn't want our parents to know. Your sister has been practicing fraud on a smaller scale for years, Chen explained during a preparation meeting. This beach house sale was just the culmination of a lifetime of deceptive behavior. She saw an opportunity when you were overseas and took it. The most heartbreaking part was discovering how Derek had manipulated our elderly neighbors. Mrs. Henderson, who lived next door to the beach house, testified that Derek had visited her multiple times in the months before the sale, spinning stories about how I was struggling financially in Africa and needed to sell the house to fund my humanitarian work. She'd even convinced Mrs. Henderson to write a character reference letter supporting the sale, claiming it would help with the paperwork. Derek was so convincing, Mrs. Henderson said during her deposition, tears in her eyes. She showed me pictures of you working with sick children, said you told her the house felt like a burden now. She made it sound so noble, like you were sacrificing your inheritance to help others. The investigation also revealed that Derek had been forging my signature for months before the actual sale. She'd practiced on bank documents, rental agreements, even Christmas cards. The FBI handwriting expert who testified showed side-by-side comparisons of my real signature with Derek's forgeries. They were nearly identical. She'd clearly spent considerable time perfecting her deception. One of the most damaging pieces of evidence was a series of text messages between Derek and her friend Madison, discovered during the digital forensics investigation. In them, Derek laid out her entire plan with chilling detail. Elena's been in Kenya for 2 months already. Limited cell service, spotty internet. I've got at least another month before she even knows what's happening. By then, I'll be long gone with the money. Madison had apparently expressed some concern, texting back, "Isn't this illegal? What if she finds out?" Derek's response was telling, "She'll find out eventually, but what's she going to do? Sue her own sister? Elena's too soft for that. She'll be mad, but she'll get over it. Besides, I'm technically family, who's going to believe I'd actually steal from her?" The arrogance in those messages was stunning. Derek truly believed she could manipulate me even after committing such a massive betrayal. She'd counted on my loyalty, my reluctance to destroy our family, my desire to avoid public scandal. In many ways, she'd been gambling on my character, betting that I wouldn't have the strength to hold her accountable. The next few weeks were a blur of legal procedures, paperwork, and difficult conversations. The house sale was voided. Fraudulent transactions have no legal standing. The Washingtons got most of their money back from the escrow that hadn't been released yet, though Derek had managed to access about $200,000 through fraudulent wire transfers during her 6-week spending spree. The worst part was calling our mother. There must be a mistake. She insisted, Derek would never. She's not capable of. Mom, she forged my signature. She sold my house. She's in jail. But she said you agreed. She said you didn't want it anymore. That Africa had changed your perspective on material things. And you believed her? Without talking to me? Silence. Then, she's always been so persuasive. She's always been a liar. Mom, you just never wanted to see it. The family imploded. My brother Kara called from New York, furious not at Derek, but at me. You had her arrested? Your own sister? She committed fraud. Kara, she stole a $2 million property. It's just a house. Family is more important than property. Then why did she steal it? He hung up on me. But the most interesting call came from someone unexpected, Derek's ex-girlfriend, Tanya. I saw the news, she said. I'm sorry this happened, but I'm not surprised. Elena, there's something you should know. This isn't her first time. What do you mean? Remember her business partner, Jean? The one who supposedly embezzled from their startup? Yeah. Derek lost everything in that deal. No. Tanya said firmly. Derek framed Jean, forged his signature on withdrawals, cooked the books. Jean was too proud to fight it, just walked away. But Derek bragged about it when she was drunk. Said Jean was too trusting, too naive. Why didn't you say anything? Would your family have believed me? The ex-girlfriend with an axe to grind? Besides, Derek threatened me. Said she'd ruin my career if I talked. Would you testify now? Absolutely. Jean would too. He's got evidence he never used. The trial was set for 6 months later. In the meantime, I moved back into the beach house, though it felt different now. Violated. The Washingtons had started renovations based on false ownership, and I had to decide what to do about the changes. Keep them. Patricia suggested when she stopped by. We designed them with love for this house. Even if we can't live here, consider it our apology for the mess. You have nothing to apologize for. I said, you were victims too. Still, we should have verified better. Our eagerness to own a piece of Malibu history made us sloppy. I learned more about my sister's lies in those months. She told the Washingtons that I was a trust fund kid playing doctor in Africa. That I begged her to handle the sale because the house held painful memories. That our grandmother would have wanted the house to go to a family who'd appreciate it. She even cried. Robert told me, said it was breaking her heart to let it go, but she knew we'd take care of it. Oscar-worthy performance, I muttered. Apparently so. She should have stuck to acting instead of fraud. The trial was brutal. Derek, tanned and in an orange jumpsuit, played the victim. Her lawyer painted me as a vindictive sister jealous of her charismatic sibling. The family dysfunction was laid bare for public consumption. But the evidence was overwhelming. Derek's defense attorney, a slick-talking man named Richard Hawthorne, tried every angle he could think of. He argued that Derek genuinely believed she had the right to sell the property, that there had been some sort of family understanding that the house would be shared among siblings. He painted Derek as a devoted sister who was simply trying to help liquidate an asset that was becoming a financial burden. He even suggested that I was being vindictive because I was jealous of Derek's social success and charm. But the prosecution had done their homework. The forged signatures, the fake documents, Jean's testimony about the previous fraud, Tanya's recordings of Derek bragging about her schemes, it all painted a picture of someone who had been planning and executing fraudulent schemes for years. The most damaging testimony came from Derek's former roommate, Samantha, whom the prosecution had tracked down in Portland. Samantha testified that Derek had been planning the beach house fraud for over a year, long before it even decided to go to Kenya. She'd been researching real estate fraud techniques, studying document forgery, and even practicing my signature using old birthday cards she'd kept. Derek used to joke about how Elena was wasting her inheritance on playing doctor in Africa, Samantha testified. She said Elena was too naive and trusting, that she'd never even notice if someone smart enough could figure out how to sell the house while she was gone. She called it her retirement plan. The prosecution also brought in a forensic accountant who traced every dollar of the fraudulent sale proceeds. Derek had spent money with reckless abandon, $30,000 on a new wardrobe, $15,000 on a luxury cruise, $8,000 on a spa weekend in Napa Valley, and $45,000 on the deposit for that Santa Monica apartment. She'd also loaned $25,000 to her new girlfriend Marcus, money that was never repaid and likely never intended to be. What struck me most during the testimony was Derek's complete lack of remorse. When she took the stand in her own defense, she was polished and articulate, but there was something cold in her eyes. She spoke about feeling entitled to the house because she'd spent more time there as a child than I had. She claimed that our grandmother had always intended for the property to be shared among all her grandchildren, not just given to one person. Elena was always the favorite, Derek testified, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Grandma Rose made no secret of it. I felt like I was being punished for not being as academically successful, for not choosing a career in medicine. The house should have been split equally among all of us. But when the prosecutor pressed Derek about the forged documents, the lies she told the Washingtons, and her elaborate planning process, her mask began to slip. She became defensive, argumentative, and finally revealed the calculating person she really was. I saw an opportunity and I took it, she said, her voice hardening. Elena was off playing saint in Africa while I was struggling to make ends meet here. She had more money than she knew what to do with, and I had nothing. It wasn't fair. So you decided to steal a $2 million property to even the score? The prosecutor asked. I decided to take what should have been partially mine anyway, Derek shot back, her composure completely gone now. Elena always acts like she's so much better than everyone else with her charity work and her medical degree. Well, maybe if she'd paid more attention to her own family instead of strangers in Africa, this wouldn't have happened. The courtroom was silent. Even Derek's own attorney looked uncomfortable. In that moment, everyone could see the real Derek, bitter, entitled, and completely lacking in empathy or responsibility for her actions. The victim impact statements were particularly powerful. Patricia Washington spoke about how the fraud had shattered her family's dream of owning a piece of Malibu history, how they'd had to explain to their teenage children that the house they'd fallen in love with was never really theirs. Mrs. Henderson testified about how betrayed she felt, having been manipulated into supporting what she thought was a noble sacrifice on my part. But perhaps the most impactful statement came from Gene Morrison, Derek's former business partner. Gene, a soft-spoken man in his 60s, described how Derek's previous fraud had destroyed not just his business but his reputation in their industry. He'd spent years rebuilding his career and his confidence, only to find out through this trial that Derek had been bragging about framing him. The worst part wasn't losing the money, Gene said, his voice shaking slightly. It was the way she looked me in the eye and lied, made me question my own memory, my own judgment. She turned my trust against me, and I've never been able to trust a business partner the same way since. When it came time for my victim impact statement, I found myself struggling with what to say. How do you quantify the betrayal of someone you'd loved and trusted your entire life? How do you explain the violation of having your signature forged, your life's work used as justification for theft, your family's most sacred space turned into a commodity? Derek didn't just steal a house, I finally said, looking directly at my sister. She stole my sense of safety, my ability to trust my own family, my faith that the people who claimed to love me wouldn't hurt me for money. She turned my commitment to helping others into a weapon against me, used my absence serving those in need as an opportunity to rob me. She didn't just commit fraud, she committed the ultimate betrayal of family trust. Derek stared back at me, her expression unreadable. For a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of something, regret, maybe, or recognition of what she'd done. But then her face hardened again, and she looked away. The worst moment came when prosecutors played a voicemail Derek had left for a friend. Elena's been in Africa for 2 months. Limited cell service. Limited internet. By the time she gets back, I'll be in the Caymans with enough money to last forever. She'll never even know until it's too late. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. The aftermath of the trial brought unexpected complications. Derek's conviction made headlines not just locally but nationally, picked up by true crime podcasts and featured in articles about sibling fraud. The attention was overwhelming and unwanted. Reporters camped outside the beach house, trying to get interviews about the doctor who brought down her own sister. The media attention brought some unexpected benefits, though. Donations poured in for the planned healing center, from people who'd heard the story and wanted to support the transformation of something negative into something positive. A retired psychologist from San Francisco offered to volunteer her services. A group of nurses from Seattle pledged to help staff the center during their vacation time. But the attention also brought out some disturbing people. I received several marriage proposals from men who'd seen the news coverage and apparently thought a doctor with $1 million property would make a good target. More concerning were the people who contacted me claiming to be other victims of Derek's schemes, people the investigation hadn't uncovered. One call that particularly stuck with me came from an elderly man named Harold Peterson in Phoenix. He claimed Derek had befriended him at a coffee shop, learned about his late wife's insurance settlement, and convinced him to invest in a bogus medical supply company she claimed to be starting. He'd lost $30,000, his entire emergency fund, but had been too embarrassed to report it to police. Detective Rivera was interested in Harold's story, but the statute of limitations had run out on his case. There were likely other victims like Harold, people who'd been too ashamed or confused to come forward, or who didn't even realize they'd been conned until they saw Derek's picture on the news. The psychological evaluation ordered by the court as part of Derek's sentencing provided some disturbing insights. Dr. Rachel Thornton, a forensic psychologist, diagnosed Derek with narcissistic personality disorder and antisocial traits. Her report described Derek as someone with an inflated sense of self-importance, a lack of empathy for others, and a willingness to exploit relationships for personal gain. The subject demonstrates a pattern of grandiose thinking and entitlement that has likely been present since adolescence, Dr. Thornton wrote. She views herself as superior to others and believes she deserves special treatment and consideration. When reality doesn't match her inflated self-image, she becomes manipulative and, when necessary, deceptive to maintain her desired lifestyle. The report went on to describe how Derek's charm and charisma were tools she used to manipulate others, not genuine expressions of warmth or affection. Even her apparent love for family members was conditional, based on what they could provide for her rather than genuine emotional connection. Reading that report was like looking at a stranger. The Derek described by Dr. Thornton wasn't the sister I thought I'd grown up with, she was a calculated predator who'd been using me and our family for years. It made me question every happy memory, every moment of apparent sisterly affection, wondering if it had all been an act. During Derek's sentencing hearing, our mother made one final plea for leniency. She took the stand as a character witness, sobbing as she described Derek as a loving daughter who just made a terrible mistake. She talked about Derek's childhood, her struggles in school, her failed relationships, painting her as a victim of circumstances rather than the architect of her own problems. "My daughter isn't a criminal," Mom insisted through her tears. "She's a lost soul who made a bad decision. Elena, please, she's your sister. Don't let them destroy her life over money." But by then, I'd learned too much about Derek's true nature to be swayed by Mom's emotional appeal. The woman being sentenced wasn't the sister I thought I knew, she was someone who'd been conning our family for decades, and I'd been too trusting to see it. The judge, the Honorable Maria Valdez, wasn't swayed either. She sentenced Derek to 8 years in state prison and ordered full restitution of $2 million plus court costs and penalties. In her statement, Judge Valdez noted the premeditated nature of the fraud, the vulnerability of some of Derek's other victims, and her complete lack of remorse. This wasn't a crime of opportunity or desperation, Judge Valdez said. This was a calculated, long-term scheme that the defendant planned and executed with remarkable callousness toward her own family. The defendant has shown no genuine remorse for her actions and continues to blame others for her choices. The court sees no reason to believe she wouldn't continue this pattern of behavior if given the opportunity. Our mother sobbed. Kara stormed out. I sat quietly feeling nothing but exhaustion. You did the right thing. Patricia Washington told me outside the courthouse. She would have kept escalating. Next time someone might have lost more than money. She was right. The investigation had uncovered other victims, elderly neighbors Derek had charmed into investments, a local charity she'd skimmed from while volunteering, a girlfriend whose credit card she'd stolen. Your sister is a predator. Detective Rivera told me, she just uses charm instead of violence. I returned to Kenya 2 months after the trial, back to the refugee camp, back to work that mattered. But first, I made one important stop. I visited Derek in prison. Come to gloat? She asked. Her usual charm replaced with bitterness. No. Come to understand why, Derek? You could have just asked. I'd have helped you. Helped? She laughed bitterly. Like you helped before with your lectures about responsibility? Your disappointment? No, thanks, sis. I wanted what was mine. The house was never yours. It should have been. She slammed her hand on the table. I'm the oldest, but Grandma always loved you more. Perfect Elena with her medical degree and her humanitarian work. She loved me because I loved her, not her assets. Easy to say when you got the assets anyway. I studied my sister, still beautiful, still arrogant, still unable to see her own faults. The beach house is being turned into a retreat for doctors with PTSD. I said quietly, free housing for medical professionals who need to heal. Grandma would have loved that. Derek's face twisted. You're giving it away? A $2 million property? I'm using it to help people. Like she used it to help us, to get us somewhere safe, somewhere beautiful. That's what you never understood, Derek. It was never about the money. Everything's about money. She said. Flatly. No. I stood to leave. That's why you're in here and I'm not. I walked out and didn't look back. Some family you're born into. Some family you choose. And sometimes, protecting yourself from the family you're born into is the healthiest choice you can make. The beach house reopened 6 months later as the Rose Morgan Healing Center, named for our grandmother. Doctors, nurses, and EMTs suffering from burnout or trauma could stay for free, finding peace in the ocean views and therapy programs. At the dedication, Patricia Washington cut the ribbon. She and Robert had become major donors, their near loss transforming into purpose. Your grandmother would be proud, Patricia said. You've turned something ugly into something beautiful. As I watched the first residents arrive, exhausted healers needing healing themselves, I thought about family. Derek was serving her time unrepentant. Mom still sent her care packages and insisted she was misunderstood. Kara had blocked my number. But here, in Grandma's house, a new kind of family was forming. One based on service, on healing, on using privilege to help others. Derek had tried to steal $2 million. Instead, she'd freed me to create something worth so much more. The sheriff had been right to arrest her mid-celebration. She'd been living the dream. She just never understood whose dream it really was.